My name is Victoria Hayes, and I'm 32 years old. The moment I saw my mother's hand tremble as she slid that forged document across the mahogany dining table to my sister, I knew my entire life had been a carefully constructed lie. It was Thanksgiving dinner, 2024. The chandelier above cast warm light on the faces I'd loved my entire life, making them look almost angelic. Almost. I'd excused myself to use the bathroom, but halfway down the hallway of my childhood home in Greenwich, Connecticut, I realized I'd left my phone on the dining room sideboard. As I approached the doorway, I heard my mother's voice, low and conspiratorial. "Jennifer, this is the last signature page we need." I've gotten quite good at copying Victoria's handwriting, haven't I? I froze. My heart didn't just skip, it stopped completely, then lurched forward like a car crash in slow motion. "Mom, are you sure she won't notice?" That was my sister Jennifer's voice, tinged with nervousness but also something else. Excitement, maybe. Greed. "Darling, your sister is so busy playing the devoted daughter, she hasn't checked these accounts in years. She doesn't even know half of what your father left her. By the time she figures it out, the money will be long gone, safely tucked away in our names." I pressed myself against the wall, my silk blouse suddenly feeling too tight, restricting my breathing. Through the crack in the door, I could see them clearly. My mother, Eleanor Hayes, 61 years old, impeccably dressed in Chanel, her silver hair styled in that perfect bob she'd maintained for decades. And Jennifer, my 28-year-old sister, wearing the Cartier bracelet I'd given her last Christmas. They were hunched over paperwork spread across the table, wine glasses pushed aside. My mother's reading glasses perched on her nose as she carefully traced my signature one more time on a practice sheet before applying it to what looked like official bank documents. "How much is in this account again?" Jennifer asked, her voice breathy with anticipation. "According to the last statement I intercepted, approximately $340,000. Combined with the other accounts we've already accessed, we're looking at nearly $1.2 million total." My knees nearly buckled. That was my inheritance from Dad. The trust fund he'd set up before he died 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack. He'd been so careful about it, meeting with lawyers, making sure I'd be taken care of. "Your mother means well, but she's never been good with money," he'd told me once, touching my cheek with his calloused hand. "This is for you, Victoria. Promise me you'll use it wisely." I'd promised. And I'd kept that promise by barely touching it, letting it grow, planning to use it someday for something meaningful. Maybe a house. Maybe a business. Maybe a family of my own. What if she's already changed the passwords or something? Jennifer worried, twirling a strand of her blonde hair, so much lighter than my mousy brown, so much more like Mom's had been in her youth. My mother laughed, actually laughed. The sound was like glass breaking. "Your sister is predictable, Jennifer. She still uses the same passwords she's used since college. Besides, I have access to her email. I've been redirecting all her banking notifications to a folder she never checks. She has no idea what we've been doing." That's when I should have burst in. That's when I should have confronted them, screamed, demanded answers. But something stopped me. A cold, calculating part of my brain that I didn't even know existed kicked in. Because as I stood there, watching my mother forge my signature one more time, I remembered something crucial. I had changed everything. 3 months ago. It had started innocently enough. I'd been having coffee with my college roommate, Madison, who worked in wealth management. She'd mentioned a cybersecurity seminar her firm had hosted. "You should really update all your financial accounts, Vic. she'd said casually. Especially trust funds. They're huge targets for fraud. I'd done it that weekend. Changed every password. Set up two-factor authentication. Moved the bulk of my money into new accounts with different routing numbers. And here's the beautiful part, I'd left exactly $1 in each of the old accounts, with a special alert system that would notify me the moment anyone tried to access them. Those alerts had started 3 weeks ago. Small probing attempts, like someone testing a locked door. I'd assumed it was random scammers. I'd even called the bank to report it. They'd assured me the security measures were working perfectly. I never imagined it was my own family. Standing in that hallway, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. I was going to let them think they'd won. I was going to watch this play out. Because I needed to know how deep this betrayal went. I needed to know if my father had suspected, if there were others involved, if this was the first time or just the latest in a long line of thefts. I crept back down the hallway, went into the bathroom, flushed the toilet for effect, ran the water, and composed my face. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My green eyes looked darker somehow, harder. I'd always been the soft one, the peacemaker, the daughter who smiled and nodded and never caused waves. That woman was gone. I walked back into the dining room with a bright smile. Sorry about that. Did I miss anything? My mother looked up, her face a mask of maternal warmth. The documents had vanished, tucked into her leather portfolio. Nothing at all, darling. Jennifer and I were just discussing her new job opportunity. Tell Victoria about it, Jennifer. Jennifer launched into an animated description of some marketing position she'd supposedly been offered. I watched her mouth move, watched her hands gesture, and saw nothing but a stranger. This woman who I'd defended my entire life, who I'd covered for when she'd wrecked Mom's car at 16, who I'd lent money to countless times, money that was never repaid. That sounds wonderful, I said, my voice steady. I'm so proud of you. She beamed at me. Thanks, Vic. You're the best sister anyone could ask for. The best sister. The words echoed in my head as I picked up my fork, as I finished my pumpkin pie, as I hugged them both goodbye 2 hours later. Mom held me extra tight. I love you so much, Victoria. You know that, right? I know, Mom. But I didn't know. Not anymore. As I drove home to my apartment in Manhattan, my phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Thanks for dinner, sis. Love you tons. 2 hearts. I pulled over, hands shaking too hard to drive safely. I sat in my car on the side of Route 95, watching the headlights blur past, and let myself feel it. The betrayal. The confusion. The devastating realization that the 2 people who should have loved me most in this world had been systematically robbing me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was an email notification from my bank. Someone had attempted to access account #XXXX4729. Access denied. Would I like to review the login attempt? I clicked yes. The login location, Greenwich, Connecticut. The timestamp, 9:47 p.m. 20 minutes ago. They'd tried it before I'd even left their driveway. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. Hysterical, slightly unhinged laughter that probably made me look crazy to anyone passing by. Because they had no idea what they'd just done. They'd tried to access an account with $1 in it, and now I had concrete proof of their attempt. The bank's security system had logged everything, the fake credentials, the forged authorization, all of it. But I wasn't going to use that proof. Not yet. Because I'd just realized something else. If they'd been doing this for weeks, maybe months, there might be other accounts I didn't know about. Other schemes. Other victims. I needed to know everything. So I did something I'd never done before in my entire life. I called a private investigator. At 10 p.m. on Thanksgiving night, I found one who answered his phone, probably because he was desperate for work or desperate to avoid his own family drama. I need you to investigate my mother and sister, I told him. I need to know everything. Where their money comes from, where it goes, who they talk to, what they're planning. Can you do that? He could. For the right price, he absolutely could. As I hung up, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror again. This time, I didn't look away from those harder, darker eyes. This was war. And they had no idea I was already 10 steps ahead. Have you ever experienced betrayal from the people closest to you? Drop a comment below, I'd love to hear your story. To understand how my mother and sister could do this to me, you have to understand how I became invisible in my own family. It didn't happen overnight. It was a slow fade, like a photograph left too long in the sun. I was 7 when Jennifer was born. Before her, I'd been everything to my parents, their miracle baby after years of trying. My father, Thomas Hayes, owned a successful construction company. My mother had been a real estate agent before she married him, but she quit to focus on me. Life was simple, happy even. I remember my father teaching me to ride a bike in our driveway, my mother reading me bedtime stories, family dinners where I was the center of attention. Then came Jennifer. She was perfect. Blonde where I was brunette. Blue-eyed where I was green. Smiley and easy where I'd been colicky and difficult. I remember standing in the hospital nursery, my hand pressed against the glass, looking at this tiny creature who'd just stolen my entire world without even trying. "Isn't your sister beautiful?" Mom had asked, her voice full of wonder. I'd nodded, because what else could I do? I was 7. I didn't have the words yet to explain that I could see my future in that moment, a future where I'd always come second. And I was right. Jennifer's first word was mama. Mine had been book. Jennifer walked at 10 months. I'd walked at 14. Jennifer was potty trained by 2. I'd struggled until 3. Every milestone she hit earlier, every accomplishment she achieved, became another nail in the coffin of my parents' attention. But Dad was different. At least, I thought he was. "You're my firstborn, Victoria," he'd tell me when I was 12, 13, struggling through the awkward phase that Jennifer seemed to skip entirely. That means something. That means you're special in a way Jennifer can never be. You made me a father. I'd clung to those words like a lifeline through my teenage years. While Mom fussed over Jennifer's soccer games, dance recitals, and endless parade of friends, Dad and I had our thing. He'd take me to his construction sites, let me wear a hard hat, explain how buildings were made from the ground up. "Everything needs a strong foundation, Vic," he'd say, his arm around my shoulders as we surveyed a new project. "You can have the fanciest design in the world, but if the foundation is weak, the whole thing crumbles." I didn't realize he was talking about more than just buildings. He was talking about family, about character, about the truth beneath the pretty surface. When I graduated high school, I'd wanted to go to Columbia to study architecture. Follow in Dad's footsteps, maybe join the family business. But Jennifer was starting high school that same year, and Mom convinced me that Columbia was too expensive, too far away, despite being only an hour from Greenwich, too impractical. "You're so smart, Victoria," Mom had said, holding my hands across the kitchen table. "You could go to state school, save us so much money, and still get a great education. Think about your sister. Think about what we'll need to save for her college too." So I went to UConn. I studied English because architecture required too much money for supplies and extra time I need to spend on campus instead of helping at home. I commuted when I could to save on dorm costs. I worked part-time jobs to pay for books. Jennifer went to NYU 4 years later. Full room and board. Art history major. No job. Mom and Dad covered everything. When I'd pointed out the inequality, Dad had pulled me aside. "Your mother babies her," he admitted. "But you, Victoria? You're the strong one. You don't need the hand-holding. You're going to be fine no matter what." I'd taken it as a compliment then. I was too young, too desperate for his approval, to see it for what it really was, an excuse. A justification for treating me as less important because I was more capable. After college, I got a job at a nonprofit in Manhattan, working on affordable housing initiatives. The pay was terrible, but the work felt meaningful. I shared a shoebox apartment with 2 roommates, took the subway everywhere, ate ramen more nights than I'd like to admit. Jennifer graduated and moved into a beautiful 1-bedroom in the West Village. "Mom and Dad are helping with rent until I get settled," she'd explained when I'd visited, trying not to show my shock at the exposed brick walls, the fancy kitchen, the doorman building. "That's generous of them," I'd managed. Dad died 2 months later. Massive heart attack at 63, right there on one of his job sites. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. The funeral was the first time I'd seen the will. Dad had left the construction company to a longtime business partner with the agreement that the partner would buy out the estate over 10 years. The house went to Mom. And the money, approximately $2.80 million in various accounts and investments, was split 3 ways. But here's where it got interesting. Mom got her third immediately, unrestricted. Jennifer got hers placed in a trust that would release in increments when she turned 25, 30, and 35. "She's young," the lawyer had explained, reading Dad's notes. "She needs guidance." "And me?" Mine went into what the lawyer called a discretionary trust. I was named as the beneficiary and the trustee, meaning I had complete control. "Your father wanted you to have total freedom with this money," the lawyer had told me. He said, and I quote, "Victoria has a good head on her shoulders. She'll know what to do with it." I'd cried. Not just because Dad was gone, but because this felt like proof that he'd seen me, valued me, trusted me in a way he didn't trust Jennifer. I'd promised myself I'd be worthy of that trust. So I'd barely touched the money. I'd kept working my nonprofit job, kept living modestly, let the investments grow. The one big thing I'd done was pay off my student loans, all $67,000 of them. That had felt good, responsible, adult. Jennifer, meanwhile, had been furious about her trust structure. "Why does Victoria get all her money now?" she demanded at the reading. "That's not fair." Mom had soothed her. "Your father was old-fashioned, darling. He thought women your age couldn't handle that much money all at once. But don't worry, we'll figure something out." I should have heard the threat in those words. We'll figure something out. Now, 3 days after Thanksgiving, I was sitting in a coffee shop in Tribeca with the private investigator I'd hired. His name was Marcus Chin, a former NYPD detective who'd gone private after getting tired of department politics. He was 40-something, with sharp eyes and the kind of face that people probably confess things to without meaning to. He slid a folder across the table. "You're not going to like this." I opened it. Inside were bank statements, credit card records, property deeds. My hands started shaking halfway through the first page. "Your mother," Marcus began, his voice carefully neutral, "has been living well beyond her means for years. The house should have been paid off with your father's life insurance payout, but she took out a new mortgage within 6 months of his death. $400,000 line of credit against the property. It's nearly maxed out." "What?" I breathed. "Your sister's apartment? Your mother pays the rent. $4,500 a month. Has been for 4 years. That's over $200,000 right there." I flipped through more pages. Designer purchases. Luxury vacations. A leased Mercedes for Jennifer. A country club membership for Mom. "How?" I asked. "Mom got her share of the inheritance, but it wasn't enough to sustain this. She'd have burned through it in 2 years." Marcus tapped another document. "She's been taking loans. Personal loans from wealthy friends, with your father's old business reputation as collateral. And here's where it gets worse. 3 months ago, when Jennifer turned 28, she petitioned the court to release her first trust installment early. Can she do that? With the right lawyer and the right arguments, yes. Especially if the trustee agrees." "Who's her trustee?" Marcus met my eyes. "Your mother. Your father named her as the backup trustee for Jennifer's trust since your sister was so young when he died. And your mother approved the early release. Jennifer got $300,000 3 months ago." The timeline clicked into place. That's when the probing attempts on my accounts had started. They'd blown through Jennifer's money in 3 months, and now they needed more. "There's something else," Marcus said quietly. He pulled out a final document. "I found this in your mother's email. She's been in contact with a lawyer about contesting your father's will, claiming you unduly influenced him." My coffee cup clattered against the saucer. "What? That's insane. I was never even alone with him during his last months." "I know. And any judge would know. But here's what I think is really happening. They're planning to forge documents claiming you're mentally unfit to manage your trust. With the right paperwork, they could petition the court to have your mother named as your trustee, giving her legal access to your funds." The room spun. This wasn't just theft. This was a systematic plan to gaslight me, to paint me as incompetent, to steal everything Dad had left me. "How long?" I asked. "How long have they been planning this?" Marcus pulled out printed emails, text messages between Mom and Jennifer that he'd somehow obtained. I didn't ask how. I didn't want to know. I read them in silence. Messages from 2 years ago. "We need to be careful with Victoria. She's smarter than she looks." From 18 months ago. "I think we can convince the court she's depressed, not managing her life well." From 6 months ago. "The trust fund is the answer to everything, Mom. We just need to be patient." And then, from 1 month ago, this message from my mother to my sister. "I've perfected her signature. The banks will never know the difference. By Christmas, we'll have access to everything." Your father was a fool to trust her with so much money. She doesn't deserve it. You do. We do. I closed the folder carefully, precisely, like I was defusing a bomb. In a way, I was. Because the rage building inside me felt explosive, dangerous, capable of destroying everything in its path. What do you want to do? Marcus asked. I looked up at him, and I saw that stranger in the mirror again. That harder, darker version of myself who'd emerged on Thanksgiving night. I want to give them exactly what they want, I said slowly. I want to let them think they've won. And then I want to watch them fall apart when they realize what they've actually done. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's cold, Ms. Hayes. You didn't read the last email in there, did you? He shook his head. I flipped to the final page and pushed it toward him. It was from my mother to Jennifer, dated just yesterday. Victoria called this morning asking if I wanted to have lunch next week. She sounded so sweet, so trusting. Sometimes I almost feel bad about what we're doing. Then I remember how your father always loved her more, always gave her more attention, always made me feel like I wasn't enough. This isn't just about money, Jennifer. This is about finally getting what we deserve after years of being treated like we were second best. Let her trust us. Let her think we love her. It'll make the betrayal so much sweeter when she realizes we've taken everything. Marcus read it. Then he looked at me with something like pity in his eyes. No, I said firmly. Don't look at me like that. I'm not the victim here anymore. They made their choice. Now I'm making mine. I stood up, gathering the folder. Keep investigating. I want to know every person they've borrowed money from, every debt they have, every lie they've told. When this is over, I want the full picture. And then? I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. And then I'm going to teach them what my father taught me. Everything needs a strong foundation. Theirs is about to crumble. As I walked out into the cold December air, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Darling, are you free for lunch on Thursday? I have something important to discuss with you. Love, Mom. I typed back, absolutely. Can't wait. Love you. I hit send and kept walking. They wanted to play games? Fine. But they'd forgotten one crucial thing about me. I'd spent my entire life being underestimated, overlooked, treated as less than. I'd learned to survive in the shadows while they basked in the spotlight. And now, those shadows were where I'd destroy them from. What would you do if you discovered your family had been systematically stealing from you? Would you confront them immediately or gather evidence? Tell me in the comments. Thursday came wrapped in freezing rain, the kind of weather that makes Manhattan feel particularly unforgiving. I stood outside Balthazar in Soho, watching my breath cloud in the air, waiting for my mother to arrive. I dressed carefully, a simple black dress, minimal jewelry, my hair pulled back in a neat bun. I looked exactly like what they thought I was, plain, forgettable, easy to manipulate. Mom arrived in a taxi, her Burberry trench coat pristine despite the weather. She kissed my cheek, and I caught a whiff of her signature Chanel No. 5. The scent used to comfort me. Now it made my stomach turn. You look thin, darling, she said as we were seated. Are you eating enough? I'm fine, Mom. She ordered a glass of wine. I ordered water. Another sign of my supposed instability, I realized. Who orders water at a nice lunch? Someone who's struggling financially. Someone who can't afford the extras. They'd been building this narrative about me for so long, I could see it playing out in real time now that I knew what to look for. "So," Mom said, once we'd ordered, "I wanted to talk to you about something important." Here it comes, I thought. "I've been worried about you, Victoria. You work so hard at that nonprofit, but you're not getting ahead. You're 32, still in that tiny apartment, no savings, no prospects for marriage or children." She reached across the table to pat my hand. "I'm not criticizing, sweetheart. I'm concerned." Every word was a calculated strike, designed to make me feel small, inadequate, in need of help. "I appreciate your concern," I said carefully. "I've been thinking about your trust fund," she continued. "The one your father left you. You've never really done anything with it, have you?" "I've been letting it grow," I said. "Dad always said." "Your father," she interrupted gently, "wasn't thinking clearly at the end. He was under so much stress with the business. Sometimes I wonder if he made the right decisions about the money." There it was. The groundwork for the mental incompetence claim. "I'm managing fine," I assured her. "Are you, though?" She leaned forward, her eyes full of fake maternal concern. "Be honest with me, Victoria. When's the last time you checked those accounts? When's the last time you even looked at the statements?" This was the moment. If I admitted I'd been checking regularly, updating security, moving money around, the whole plan would fall apart. They needed me to be negligent, to be ignorant. So I gave them what they wanted. Honestly, I haven't looked in months. Maybe longer. I know I should, but it's all so complicated, and I trust that it's growing like the financial advisor said it would. Mom's eyes lit up. She tried to hide it, but I saw it. Victory. "Oh, sweetheart. That's exactly what I was afraid of. Those accounts need active management. And with all the cyber scams these days." She trailed off meaningfully. "You think something's wrong?" "I don't know. That's why I wanted to talk to you. Maybe we should check together? I still have some of the paperwork from when your father set everything up. I could help you review it all, make sure everything is in order." "That would be amazing, Mom. I've been so overwhelmed with work." "I know you have, darling." She squeezed my hand. "That's what family is for. To help each other." I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Or throw my water in her face. Instead, I smiled gratefully. "When did you want to do this?" "What about this weekend? You could come to the house. Jennifer will be there too. We'll make a day of it, go through all the paperwork, make sure everything is secure, maybe have a nice dinner after." A nice dinner. After they'd stolen everything. The audacity was almost impressive. That sounds perfect. We finished lunch with small talk. She asked about my job, barely listened to my answers. She told me about the country club's Christmas party, the new chef at her favorite restaurant, Jennifer's promising job prospects. Every word was a performance, and I matched it with my own. As we hugged goodbye on the sidewalk, she held me extra tight. "I love you so much, Victoria. You know that, right? No matter what happens, you're my daughter, and I only want what's best for you." "I know, Mom." I love you too. I watched her hail another taxi and disappear into the gray afternoon. Then I walked 3 blocks, making sure she was truly gone, before I pulled out my phone and called Marcus. She took the bait, I said. They're planning to make their move this weekend. You're sure you want to go through with this? We have enough evidence now to press charges. Not yet. I need them to actually attempt the theft. I need them caught in the act. Victoria, Marcus said carefully, you're playing a dangerous game. If they realize you know, they won't. I've been the invisible daughter my whole life, remember? They've never really seen me. They're not going to start now. I hung up and made my next call. To my actual financial advisor, William Reed, at Morgan Stanley. He'd been managing Dad's investments for 20 years. Mr. Reed, it's Victoria Hayes. I need to make some changes to my accounts. Of course. What did you have in mind? I want to move everything into the old accounts. The ones I emptied 3 months ago. Silence on the other end. Then, Ms. Hayes, you specifically moved that money to avoid potential security breaches. Moving it back would leave you exposed to. I know exactly what it would do, I interrupted. How long would it take? We'd need to reverse the transfers, update the routing information, 2 days, maybe 3. Do it. But set up a special monitoring system. I want to know the second anyone attempts to access those accounts. And I want immediate freeze capabilities, understood? Ms. Hayes, what's going on? I'm catching thieves, Mr. Reed. And I need them to think they've found gold. I could hear him typing. This is highly irregular. So is family members forging your signature to steal your inheritance. Can you do it or not? More typing. I'll have it done by Friday afternoon. But Victoria? Be careful. Money makes people do terrible things. I know, I said softly. I'm learning that the hard way. The next 2 days crawled by like wounded animals. I went to work, smiled at my coworkers, pretended everything was normal. At night, I paced my tiny apartment until my downstairs neighbor banged on their ceiling with a broom handle. I rehearsed conversations in my head. Planned contingencies. Imagined 1,000 different ways this could go wrong. Marcus sent me updates throughout Thursday and Friday. Mom had been to the bank twice that week, both times asking detailed questions about estate account access and beneficiary rights. Jennifer had been Googling things like how to transfer money between accounts, statute of limitations on financial fraud, and, my personal favorite, countries without extradition to U.S. They weren't even being careful. They were so confident in my ignorance, so sure of their own cleverness, that they'd gotten sloppy. Arrogant. It would be their downfall. Friday afternoon, Mr. Reed called. It's done. All your assets are back in the original accounts. The security monitoring is active. But Ms. Hayes, I'm obligated to tell you, this goes against every piece of advice I'd normally give a client. Noted. And thank you. There's $1.4 million in those accounts now. If someone accesses them fraudulently, they won't get far. Trust me. I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, Mr. Reed. So do I. That night, I barely slept. I kept checking my phone, expecting alerts, but nothing came. They were waiting for me to be there, I realized. They wanted me present for my own destruction. They wanted to see my face when I realized what they'd done. They wanted to watch me break. They were going to be disappointed. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright, one of those December days where the sky is so blue it almost hurts to look at. I took the train to Greenwich, the familiar route I'd traveled 1,000 times. The conductor recognized me, nodded hello. I wondered if this would be the last time I'd make this journey. If after today, I'd have any reason to return to the town where I'd grown up. The house looked the same as always. The Christmas wreath on the door that Mom put up the day after Thanksgiving. The perfectly manicured lawn, brown now with winter but still neat, still controlled. Dad's old BMW in the driveway, Mom had kept it, couldn't bear to sell it, though she never drove it. I stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, looking at this house that had been my sanctuary once. My prison sometimes. The place where I'd learned what love looked like, and later, what the absence of love felt like. This was it. After today, nothing would be the same. I rang the doorbell instead of using my key. A small thing, but significant. I wasn't family anymore. I was a guest. An adversary. A trap waiting to spring. Mom answered the door with her warmest smile, pulling me into a hug that smelled like expensive perfume and lies. Victoria! Come in, come in. Jennifer's already here. We're set up in your father's study. Of course they were. Dad's study. The room where he'd worked late into the night, building his business, planning for our futures, trying to protect me from the very people who now sat in his space, plotting to steal what he'd left me. They'd chosen it deliberately, I realized. Maximum psychological impact. Make me think of Dad, make me emotional, make me vulnerable. It wouldn't work. Jennifer was sitting at Dad's desk when I walked in, and the sight of her there, in his leather chair, her hands on his desk, her feet where his had been, made something crack inside my chest. She looked up and smiled, that dazzling smile that had gotten her out of trouble her whole life. Hey, sis! Ready to dive into the boring world of finance? As ready as I'll ever be, I said, setting down my purse carefully. My phone was in my coat pocket, recording everything. Marcus had helped me set it up last night. Audio, video, timestamps. All admissible in court. The desk was covered with papers. Real estate documents. Investment statements. And there, in the center, a laptop open to what looked like a banking website. So, Mom began, settling into the other chair and gesturing for me to sit on the couch. Lower than them, I noted, another power play. Jennifer and I have been doing some preliminary research, and we think we've found some concerning issues with your accounts. What kind of issues? Jennifer leaned forward, her face full of fake concern that probably looked genuine to anyone who didn't know her. It looks like there might have been some unauthorized access attempts. We're worried someone's been trying to hack your accounts. The irony was so perfect I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. They were warning me about the very thing they were planning to do. The gaslighting was almost beautiful in its audacity. That's terrifying, I said, letting my voice tremble slightly. What should we do? Well, Mom said smoothly, like she'd rehearsed this 100 times, and she probably had, the best thing would be to verify all the account information, make sure all the security measures are up to date. But to do that, we'll need your login credentials. There it was. The ask. The moment they'd been building toward for months, maybe years. I hesitated, playing my role perfectly. I don't know, Mom. Isn't that kind of personal? Darling, we're your family. Who else are you going to trust? Mom's voice was so sincere, so loving, so convincing that if I hadn't known better, I would have believed her. Hell, part of me still wanted to believe her. That's how good she was. Besides, your father would have wanted us to help you. He'd want to know his daughter was protected. The invocation of Dad was a low blow, and they knew it. They were betting on my grief, my nostalgia, my desperate desire to believe my family loved me. They were betting on the little girl who'd stood at that hospital nursery, hoping to be seen. They were betting on a version of me that no longer existed. Okay, I said slowly, reaching for my phone. But I'm not sure I remember all the passwords. It's been so long since I checked. That's fine, Jennifer said quickly, too quickly. Eager. We can do password resets. We just need access to your email to get the reset links. Of course they did. They'd been intercepting my emails for months, but now they wanted official access. Probably to cover their tracks better, to make it look like I'd authorized everything, to build their case that I was incompetent and needed their help. I pulled out my phone, made a show of thinking hard, furrowing my brow like this was difficult. Okay, my email password is Thomas Hayes 1962. That's Dad's name and birth year. Jennifer typed it in on the laptop. Got it. Okay, now we just need to wait for the bank password reset emails. We sat in silence. Me on the couch, them at the desk, Dad's desk, all of us staring at the laptop screen. My heart was racing so fast I thought they might hear it, but I kept my face neutral, curious, slightly anxious like someone who genuinely didn't know what was happening. The emails started and going. Arriving within minutes. First National Bank. Morgan Stanley. Chase Private Client. All my financial institutions, all sending password reset links. Wow, you have a lot of accounts, Jennifer said, trying to sound casual but failing. I could hear the greed in her voice, the excitement. Did you